Okay, thank you, everyone. Kirk, come forward. I am pleased to introduce our speaker, a collector and expert on Thomas Edison's Kinetoscope. We will proceed with our highly anticipated presentation by our friend, Kirk Bauer. Please join me in thanking Kirk for coming all the way from Connecticut in terrible traffic yesterday.
Make your Kathleen? It's not, you can't hear it, just for instance. Hello. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you all for coming. And I have to apologize. I'm not a professional speaker of any sort. And I'm just a novice for collecting Kinetoscope, mostly Edison. I started with photographs and branched over into motion pictures. And I initially had questions about Kinetoscopes, and nobody really could give me any answers to my questions. So for the past 40 years, I've been picking up a piece here, a small collection of stuff that maybe was ready to go out for trash. And anyway, it accumulated. It's like the photographs and records. So hopefully I can not disappoint with this. Okay, well, kinetoscopes, it's kind of a strange name. I believe it means, translates from Greek meaning moving view. And Edison just chose that, just like he compiled the word phonograph. Same idea. But what it is a movie projector. And obviously most people have never heard the word anymore. Back then it was the thing. But other people called it other things. Projectoscope, vitoscope. They had all these different things. But his camera, he named the kinetograph. And, well, anyway, Elliot, could you possibly put up this here? Yeah, there we go. Here was one of his very first experiments. And from what I gather, a lot of this stuff was lost in the fire. Fires, as Edison says in a later interview. He says early models were destroyed. I don't even know where this is, if it still exists. But what it was is he had taken a strip of film and had multiple images put upon it. And he wrapped it around with his cylinder, a cylinder kind of mimicking the phonograph, the cylinder phonograph. And the whole thing, backing it up, actually was taken from the idea of Edward Muybridge, if you've all heard of him. He was a man who was hired by a man named Stanton. Now, I've never had the time to really do the research, but I'm not sure if this Stanton is the same Stanton who was governor of California, and or if he's the same man who was secretary under Lincoln's administration. Good possibility. So anyway, what he was hired to do was to confirm whether a horse actually has a foot on the ground at all times when it's doing a trot. So what he did, he came up with the idea of setting up, I'm not sure how many cameras, 24 cameras. Had to be quite an outlay of money that you could find that many cameras back at that time. Strung wires across the ground, and as a rider ran the horse across, it tripped the wires, and each one of the cameras in the line snapped a picture. So then what he was able to do was actually piece them all together, and he put them in on a strip of paper. And he would actually sell these. He actually went into marketing them, selling them almost like a home novelty item, where you put it in a cylindrical thing with slots in it, acting like a shutter, and you would spin it, and as you would see it, you would actually watch the horse go through all of the motions of its trot. And needless to say, I don't know which way the bet was, who bet which way, but the horse does leave the ground at times. So anyway, this year is 1893-ish, I believe. 1880 what? 1889. Okay, thank you. 1889, and in 1888 is when he had filed for a caveat for doing for the eye what the phonograph did for the ear, and obviously went to work on it. To my surprise was that W.K.L. Dixon was there working for Edison prior to this, and I'm almost gathering that he was hired as a photographer expert, because he's actually in the picture, or one of the pictures of Edison after they had completed the first perfected phonograph in 1888. And so anyway, he went on, or evidently was put in charge of doing a lot of the research under Edison's guidance of which way he wanted to go with certain things. Because there was even an image that he had done up of welcoming Mr. Edison back when he came back from a faraway trip. I'm not sure exactly where he had gone at the time. But Edison went on to develop his first camera, which I'm not sure. Do we get a camera? No, that's the projector. Anyway, the very first one was horizontal, and it was still a strip of film like he did it, but the perforations were only on one edge of the film, and it ran left to right, right to left, whichever way it was supposed to be projected, and it acted as a camera and a projector. But I guess it was really kind of murky as far as the image goes. So anyway, later on they decided that they were going to go vertical with it, like it is on any of these here that are before you, and that way they could get probably better, bigger, more compact reels. What's the next image we have? Okay, okay. This here is the first kinetoscope, projecting kinetoscope, that Edison did not invent. It was invented by a man by the name of Thomas Armat, and Edison gave him credit for removing the flicker, which made, as Edison put it in a later interview, made projection successful. And he was brought to Edison to demonstrate his item by Raff and Gammon, who were the two gentlemen who had the rights to sell and or rent the peephole kinetoscope, which Edison did market. Got that actually up and running kind of 1893, 1894 for the Chicago World's Fair. And just whether it actually happened, I don't know, but it was... They never exhibited, but that's what their intent was. They actually had a spot there. Yeah, okay. And anyway, we could show what a peephole one was. Anyway, that's what they were like. They were just a stand-up box that you had to bend over, drop your money in, and only one viewer at a time. But it ran as a continuous loop inside, behind the door there. It was a bank of spools, and the film was threaded up and down, up and down, up and down, and it ran through across the top right where he was. And I don't think there was much of any enlargement done for the view, as it was 35 millimeter. And there was a light that would flash in there, or a light that would be there with a shutter as well. But why there was any difference between the projecting of it with a shutter versus the peephole with a shutter, I'm not sure. But the shutter idea did exist. And anyway, that's how it went. Now, do we have just a couple more views of that? Here's a parlor, how it had to be, since you only got to see one piece at a time, or one part of the film at a time. If, like, say, for a boxing match, there would be, say, however many rounds, 4 or 5 rounds or whatever. So you actually had to put a nickel in each machine, because they didn't swap out the films until they were wore out or they needed to change them because people wanted to see new items after weeks or months or whatever it went. So anyway, it would cost you 25 cents to see a boxing match in a box.
Anyway, I don't know what else we have. Okay, just now getting onto the projecting things. Now you see the image on the right is a newer version of the Armand projector, and that was same thing. They still didn't have what movies are. We know them to be today as a story, a real storyline. It was basically just seeing pictures in motion. So what they had, there was these short subjects, and they would do the same thing here. They could either do it on a small reel, because the reels were small, of film, and they would just project it through, or they would put it on the spool bank. They had this rack. If you see that item between the projector right here, there's the projector with the lens, and then this racking. This is what's the spool bank is going here, free in the air here, held on this wooden tree. That's what was inside. That's what was kind of what was inside the spool bank peephole projector, kinetoscope, non-projector. Anyway, that's how the very first ones operated. Now, as a special note, since the picture's here, electricity really wasn't around in all locations for projection. So this one here has a gas making outfit. They'd actually have to make their own carbide gas, and have for the lamp house, which is right there, barely out of view, which is this here. You would have a different type of burner. This one here was for carbon arc. It's not what's in there right now. I just utilized the carbon holders to hold the halogen bulb in there for projection today. The carbon arc proved to be the best light source for projection because of the dim. It requires a lot of light for a good projection. The gas system would work on a burner like this that would be in there. All these can be converted to utilize either type, because they would have to be adjusted to get it in the center of the condensers to get the light in the right spot. Otherwise, you get kind of a strange, skewed image and such. But here, this is a gas limelight burner. This here would be a slick of limestone, and as it's burning, it would produce a very nice white glow, and they would also have a reflector mounted in the back here to help with capturing more light and throwing it forward. But as it was burning, here's where the gas would be. This is where the actual open flame would be burning, right on this tip of this metal hook right here, and that's what would be throwing the flame on that limestone, and that would have to be turned manually, just like the carbon arcs were. The carbon arcs had to be constantly being adjusted because they would burn apart. So what you'd have to do, and this was a fun thing that I learned, is, well, how do you start a carbon arc? You know, there's no light switch to speak of other than you just throw the knife switch to get the juice there. But now how does it work? What you have to do is you actually have to turn one of these knobs, this one here, and these two arms are ratcheted on a rack and pinions. And what would happen is, as it burns apart, because it will burn apart and stop, it'll cease, it'll just stop jumping. What you have to get them to do is to touch the tips. And you'll get a little spark there, and since it is so blinding, they actually have a colored glass in there for you to view it through, like a welder's mask. And you touch it, and then you slowly have to pull it apart. And it's that jump of that arcing of that electricity is what gives you the light. But like I said, the carbon of the pencils, they're like a pencil, a big thick pencil, and they burn apart. It erodes, gets messy or whatever, and it gets hot. As you can see on this here, this is you can see how hot that gets. It just burned that finish right off of the bluing, the gun bluing off of this metal. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So would this be something people would not have? Would they have that in their home?
You would have to be very wealthy to have that in your home. Yeah, they were right around $225, $250 for a projector. I think the peephole kinetoscopes, those were right about the same thing, but you had to buy the film, all this stuff, and you would need electricity. So I mean, I really don't think anybody would have had a peephole kinetoscope at home.
They could see this, see what. Could they go to a central place?
Well, can we go back to the parlor? See the parlor here? There's a whole bank of them here. And very often they already had these types of machines for the phonograph. People are going in and listening with ear tubes, one cylinder at a time, a person at a time. It wasn't an audio free-for-all like a jukebox would play.
Yes. Another question. Is sound part of the movie?
It could. Some of these, not all of them. They actually had a phonograph, an Edison phonograph down in the base there that actually would play just music while a dancer is dancing or whatever. No timed in vocal speech that I know of. You know, I'm sure they experimented with it, but it was probably just too darn difficult to get that synchronized. Synchronization was the key to.
But eventually he did that.
He did do that. But you know, another person had interviewed Theodore Edison, Edison's youngest son, and he claimed to this person who told me the story was that the projectionist union basically made the talking pictures not work, the Edison system of 1913.
It's not actually true.
No, it's
the
not.
problem is it was a very difficult system to synchronize.
Yeah.
This is the meta metaphone.
Kinetophone, yes.
Roughly developed 1911 and commercialized 1913, 1914, and World War I back in the end. But it was a system with a pulley system to synchronize sound recording and motion pictures, and it didn't work very well. There were lots of other people working on sound between about 1907 and
1907, 1908, yeah. Yeah, but it actually ended with the factory fire of 1914. But we're way ahead of ourselves here. that was the end all of it right there, because that was it. No more projectors were being built. They still were making movies. And the odd thing I've been watching, or in my observations as a novice here, that the regular line of motion pictures, the regular silent line of motion pictures, is there's virtually no advertising touting the talking. It was like a totally separate thing. Now these guys must have been given a mailing of sorts or whatever to get to know what the next talking ones that came out. But it seems like it really if it made it 6 months, I'd be really surprised, because they supposedly at the same time, at the end, just before the factory fire, they had recalled the kinetophone system, because there was a system with telephones and everything. They had to get to somebody in the back to get the cylinder player going behind the screen, readied with the record, and they actually had the clack noise, so they knew the timing with was it either a blank or a flash of blank brightness on the screen. This was how they knew how to synchronize initially, to get it going initially. But then the projectionist was supposed to keep it going in together, you know. But I heard stories about, like, they said that the cabling would be chewed on by rats because it was tasty and all this kind of stuff. All this stuff was a troublesome thing. But I think really, Paul over there, Dr. Israel, right? I'm pretty much guessing that the story might be true with the projectionist. I really don't want to do this. I'm probably not making any more money. Why do I want to do this? And let's just let it take care of itself, so to speak, you know? Because when its synchronization is good, like you can see nice DVDs that are made, it is very good. It's wonderful to watch. It's entertaining.
that's all digital synchronization.
Right.
The old system.
Yeah.
Really.
And if there was any film clipping going on with repairs, because they'd take out a swath because bad sprocket holes or whatever, now you're losing image to get it, what do you do with the excess sound? When the guy's talking or singing or whatever, and it's just, how do you get that back together? Very, very cumbersome. And I'm sure that when they did sound on disc in 29, that they probably ran into the same issues, Anyway, these are early people proud of their enterprise that they're doing here with Edison projectors and again gas making, because not everybody had electricity or that kind of volume of electricity, especially rural. I think if you go to another one, Elliot, this is inside an actual booth. Now this here looks like this was kind of somewhat fireproofed by metal walls. Now here's a rural guy, but he's also using an Edison standard phonograph, kind of blocked out of view here by my other projector here. See the Edison standard there, and he's holding a cylinder record. And again, it's not vocal sound. It's just entertainment music to go along with the particular film, and that alone can make or break a movie by not having the right music being played that will add something to it. Okay, so what I have here now is a small representation of these projectors. This one here happens to be what I call or deem an interim machine from that spool bank one that you saw up in that image there we talked about with the spools going behind. This one here, it has the very first take-up arm, because earlier, if they didn't, as you saw with the spool bank, they'd never had a take-up. That's where the film would just have to run onto the floor, in a box, in a bag, I was told. But they came up and developed a nice take-up device, and that's what's on this particular projector here. They had to open up the front here, put a hole in there. This one works. I've never actually run one, but I'll tell you, it's all on a friction wheel. One wheel this way, one wheel this way, and it's running like a car tire on there. And I don't know how well that really would have worked, but they later went on and developed one that way, which is on that one there. Now that would in progression. They would go from this one here, which is right around the 1900. 1899, 1900, 1901, somewhere in there. And that one there is circa 1907. But that also would have had open reels like this, an open reel hanger like this, when it first came out. But shortly thereafter, they had to put these film magazines on because people died at a theater in Boston in 1908. They had to get them underwriter approved. And so what they did was they put that film magazine box around the reel. It was just, you'd have to have the film reel inside there. Yeah, here like this. And what happens, or what happened is, should the film catch fire by the heat of the lamp, the film's going to immediately want to burn in both directions. So what they did is they put a set of rollers right here for the film to come through, limited oxygen for it, so it would snuff itself out. Because what ended up happening at the theater, the fire evidently got away. And the other thing of note that because of that I was told is that's when they came out with lit exit signs. That became another standard that was needed, because with that black smoke between not being able to get your oxygen to breathe, you pass out. You didn't know where the exits were, or to get out in time, get out fast. I mean, those are accidents that still happen today. Not necessarily by film, but you get into a locked-in situation like that, and you don't know where it is. Hotels too. You really have to. You're supposed to take that a little initiative on your own and see where the exits are, because you might have to crawl in the dark to get out. And lastly, I did not bring one other one, but it's based it's what this one here is based on, and basically looks the same. They did not have the outside revolving shutter here, like this one here has. And the shutter was inside, just like this one has an inside revolving shutter, and this one here has an inside revolving shutter. Okay. One other thing of note: this is a fire shutter that automatically closes down, opens up when you get it up to projection speed. Then when you stop, the door flaps, so it's preventing the film from getting ignited by the heat of the condensed light. It does get warm. It's not only the carbon arc that's warm, it's the projection, the focused. You know, when you were kids, you know, did you ever play with a magnifying glass? You know, same principle. So anyway, this one here is the last of the general line of 35 millimeters. This one here, they upgraded it with, evidently they realized that these narrow straight cut gears, they tended to wear out over time. I mean, because that's just bapping through that film time and time and time and time again. I actually have trade papers or invoices from people sending their heads in to be reworked at the Edison factory. And it was amazing when you figure how everything was shipped by rail, how fast the turnaround was. Even when they did 2-3 posts a day. You know, that's something that you don't even conceive today. You're lucky if you get a letter in a week. Never mind back then. They were posting back and forth, you know, between major cities pretty darn fast. Well, they did the same thing with the express of freight. They actually got the stuff in there. They'd have a 2-day turnaround. The guy would have it back in his movie theater so he could be showing pictures again. But what they decided to do, or they needed to do for an upgrade, the final upgrade here, was they put helical cut gears, which is supposed to run quieter and smoother and less wear and tear on the equipment of the run train of itself. And they went on prior to this. They put the outside revolving shutter. Easy for the exhibitor to get synchronized correctly in the right location, so that when the film stops, it can be viewed through projected up onto the screen, and then as the film is advancing, the solid part blocks off the light, and it reduces the schmear. There's nothing worse than watching this schmear or a halo or whatever that's on the screen. You can suffer through it, but it's just not the way it's supposed to be. It's not life pictures then at that point. The final kinetoscope that they came out with, they called it the super kinetoscope. The only one that I know of and have ever seen, but not up that close to actually touch it, is in Edison's laboratory at West Orange. And that one there, they made into an enclosed head, and they have nice little oil ports and jets to keep everything well lubricated. And the sad story about that particular machine is they did an initial manufacture of 30 of them. 3 of them were sold and shipped. Then the factory burned in December 9th of 1914. So 27 of them went down with the building. And only 3 made the escape. I had heard that one collector back in the 40s had one in the Virginia. I'm not sure, in the state of Virginia, he had one. I don't know where the 3rd one was, or for that matter, if the one that's at Menlo Park, at West Orange, if that is just a prototype, or whether that's one of the 3. That I don't know. That's always a possibility because it looks different than what I've seen pictures of. It's a little bit different makeup. But then again, the little makeup looks kind of murky, so it's kind of, maybe it was in the fire. I don't know. Which was really a sad thing, because I'd really like to see how well and if there is a difference, because there's really not, to my knowledge, any really great difference of the projection quality between all 3 of these. Maybe one just lasts better than the other. But now they actually had another. There was one other 35 millimeter. It was called the Universal. I have a couple of them, but none of them are complete. They probably produced right around 8,000 to 9,000 of them, and just by serial numbers that I've seen on the ID tags, the serial number plates. And that one really isn't so much of an Edison contributing kind of projector at all. It basically was another company came up with that design, and they basically made it to take their profit away from them by selling them the same thing. Like I'll sell you a light bulb with a different base, just to make sure that you don't get the sale I do. You know.
Question. So, what were most of their movies, like how did they paint? Like were they romances, were they mysteries?
All of the above. And you know, it might be a word of note that not all movie houses showed the whole line. They would pick and choose. All the other movie companies, S&A, Selig, trying to think, there was a Victor, Lux, and they all had their own motifs. I'm trying to think who else was here. Kalem, all these companies you never heard of. But they were big, and eventually Hollywood just won over. Some of them got bought out by Hollywood concerns. And
I have one more question.
Mhm.
Sorry. So I'm not sure if I was talking to you, but wasn't there something where people who had home projectors would send their film out, and they would like Blockbuster. They could order a film and then they would return the other ones.
well, not on the 35 millimeter line. Initially, way back in the day, you actually had to buy the film. The films could be quite expensive. You actually had to buy them. I think on the peephole kinetoscope, they started at $10, and I think they went up $50, $75 for the film. How long they lasted, I don't know. But you actually
The film didn't cost them.
But it was. I have a catalog, and it was evidently probably by the length. Maybe.
You have
maybe.
a catalog for the original people.
Yeah. And they actually had that price range of what you had, but you had to buy the film. I'm not sure exactly when it
Film
happened.
was so part of it is individuals weren't buying film.
Right. Well,
Exhibitors
exhibitors,
were
'cause
purchasing
that's how it was.
kinetoscopes, and then they would rent the film back.
Eventually, the renting thing came in.
They purchased them
Right.
initially.
And I'm not sure exactly when that happened. It had to be in the early 1900s.
So 1897 is when the Edison Universal Projecting Kinetoscope was developed. So
Yeah.
he actually marketed something called the Edison Universal Projecting Kinetoscope in the period roughly 1897, 1901. So I don't know which machines you're saying are not Edison's that are called
Yeah,
because he was trying
the
to.
universal.
He actually sued some people over the copyright
They-
use of the term universal.
They
So-
dropped them. They just mysteriously disappeared out of the Edison catalogs about 1908. Major reason maybe because the
Well, in 1907 they brought out a newer model.
well yeah, but in this particular case, one of the problems was because films weren't necessarily a full 10-inch reel. A lot of them were shorter subjects. Well, the smaller projector, which like I said, I have several of, they can't handle a 10-inch reel because the arms are much smaller. They had their own special smaller, I think a 7-inch.
So the small ones that you have, are those the home projecting kinetoscopes, or are these the regular kinetoscopes?
The regular 35 millimeter. Yes. Yeah.
So somebody had asked about home movies.
Yes.
And
Well,
that's much later. That's
now when
in
Cat
the teens, Edison markets something called the home projecting
right,
kinetoscope.
which is here.
Yeah.
Okay, and here. But that's where they would do the exchange program. It was on the home kinetoscopes because again, films were expensive. Those also were sold at a price range of $2.50. You had to buy one though. In each price range. When Edison loved the alphabet. The shortest film was classified an A film, $2.50. If you tired of that film, you could keep it, but if you tired of it, you actually could mail it back through a system that he had, which I finally managed to find a coupon book, which for the longest time I figured I'll never get to see what one looked like, because it had monetary value. And with that particular system, they gave you a sheet of perforated things with each film title. It told it what class it was, and again, it was graduated by the length of the film, required how many 10-cent coupons you had to include. You would mail it back to the Edison factory. They would inspect it because it couldn't be overly damaged. They wouldn't accept it. But you could exchange it for that coupon and request another film title. Well, again, because it was limited as far as what was available, certain movies were probably more popular than others. Just the same thing for the 35 millimeter. When it came back to your question as far as what types of films were made, industrial, dramatic, comedy, they made them all, but I find it kind of difficult. People would pay 10 cents on a Saturday night to go see how something's made. Very, very educational, might be a little bit entertaining as adult, but I just can't quite see those being big.
Early pictures is that a lot of the early pictures are what are essentially scenes, everyday scenes, right?
Yeah,
because
right.
just the image moving on
Right.
screen.
Hence the small
Right.
short films and the
But
spool
by
bank.
the early 1900s,
People were bored with it already.
people are beginning to produce
Yeah,
story film.
exactly.
The Great Train Robbery,
1903,
is a really
yeah.
important film in terms of that history, and then you begin to get what is really the story film emerges.
Right. Yeah.
Right, roughly between 1903 and 1907. By
Life.
1908, you have what's known as the Nickelodeon era, where you begin to get these larger theaters. They're not movie palaces yet, but they're
Mhm.
larger storefront theaters
Right.
with story films as the common thing. Before that, what tended to happen was that both projected films and the people with Kinetoscope, you would have a series of different films,
Yeah.
and a program would be put together
Could be.
by
Yes.
the exhibitor
Yeah.
of these short films. And then you begin to get the longer multi-reel story films, and that's what changes.
Right.
movies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But still, as far as comedy and such, right? I think those are probably the most that have transcended the best. The dramas are tough to sit through.
Thank you.
By today's standard. Okay, well anyway, as we hit upon the home kinetoscopes, in 1912, what happened in 1912? The Titanic went down. Well, they probably never got to see one. Well, the home kinetoscopes, which came out in like this one right here. This is how they were, and they came in a compact can like this. This is up for projection. The arms would have to be put on here. You put the film in and project it. And they also had a stereopticon, just as the 35 millimeters did. They started that maybe 1900-ish with the stereopticon, and you could put slides in here and project slides on while you were changing reels to keep the entertainment and people focused on the screen. And that was done just by sliding the lamp house over to the side, bypassing the gearing system. And you had a second projection lens, which you had to get all pre-readied in projection mode. Why don't we watch one of the entertainment things? They did everything. They did public announcements. They did entertainment of songs. That's how people would learn to hear a new song that just came out. And we'll go ahead and run that. There's a whole series of companies that came out making these.
San Antonio, sung by Billy Murray, Edison Ragholt. As the moon was peeping on the hill, after the war was through, they sat a cowboy and his partner Bill. Cowboy was feeling blue. We'll get some downtown, down into town, town, big time for me and you. Don't find your old gal, you know it's cold town if what you say is true. Where is he now, Bill Price? And his partner just replied.
Everybody's having PowerPoint issues. I did, our here.
Well, I was imagining how many issues they had with the early kinetoscopes with all those chemicals inside, so it's no wonder they went on fire. And then the film, of course, could be, very highly flammable.
Yep.
So we have no fires over going to happen over here.
You can do the barnyard.
It's not what I do.
I just brought 2 sets along in case you guys enjoyed it. Go home singing a new song. Yeah, the other one is. The other one's a modern jazz band.
Do you want this?
Yep.
Come on, Si, come on, Sue, bring along Sal and Joshua too. Come on down to the barn with me, for there's gonna be a big jamboree. Horse and mule, we'll be cutting up like a fool out of school. Catch that nag, hitch her to the wagon, then we'll go to hear the barnyard rag. When the old hens cackle and the roosters crow, bring along your fiddle, tighten up your bow. When the old cows bellow and the young pigs squeal, that is the time for the chicken wheel. When the ducks begin to shout with their quack, 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 and the goats begin to button with an awful crack, the geese and the gander start to wiggle and wag, and you know they're going crazy about the barnyard rag.
Anyway, that's how you have to learn a new song. And of course, the composer's making money if you bought their shit. But it gave you a full evening's entertainment if there was no vaudeville in your town or whatever. They could even play these at vaudeville in your houses as well, I'm sure. Okay, so the home kinetoscope, that's where we have the interchange, the exchange program. But initially the projectors had only a single arm, and again, it was a take-up reel issue. They didn't have a take-up reel when they initiated it here. And what happened is that you will see, you collect these things, you come across one. This major board, motor board, which holds the projector head, as well as the lamp house, you will notice there's variations here. Some of them have these notches cut in here. And that's, like I said, this thing is stored inside the case. Bring it out and play. Well, now you set it up on there, and it becomes a projection photo. And if you projected this early version like this, the very first version, you project it and you drop down inside the can here, it becomes big. Yes, good. Then you had to crank it back a second, you have to move the image to this middle row. Comes as 3 rows of images on a single piece of film. And you crank it backwards, and now it has to come back up out of there. Well, I imagine they were having a lot of catching snags and rip sprocket holes because of that. So very shortly thereafter, they came out with a take-up reel mechanism, which I have here. And if we have time and people have time, I will run this for you. Okay, so what you did was throw this one away, and you had to buy this one, and this was go on in its place. Okay, so you put your film on here, you project it through, it should take it up on this one. Then when you project backwards in the middle row, it'll come back through the projector back up to here. Then you move this dial one more time. I don't know if you can see this on here, how this actually moves from left to right. Can you see that? So there's 3 stages that this works out as. Okay. Forward, first row, get to the end, move it to the second stage, middle stage, crank backwards, get it back up here, and then you move to the left 3rd time, and you crank the 3rd time. And then when you were done, then you had to rewind it back onto your spool here by hand, manually, to get it off of there so you could put the film on. But the films were so expensive. These projectors, I don't know if you're familiar with the cost of an Edison opera phonograph. That was one of your higher end. Ideally, it was the most expensive as far as an outside portable type machine. The opera took its place, and it became right around $85. Well, that's what this projector cost, $85. Same era. Then the A film cost $2.50, a B film cost $5, and it kept going all the way up to H. And H film cost $20, the price of a standard phonograph. Of course, by then, 1912, standards were probably a little bit more like 30, 35. But that's how the whole thing worked as far as price, graduation, and of course the same thing corresponded. So if you wanted to exchange your $20 movie, your $20 movie would take you a whole $1 in coupons. You had to buy the coupon book from your dealer. That's where you bought your projector, your home Kinetoscope projector. They were sold through phonograph dealers, select phonograph dealers. They had to apply and be approved. They had to apply and be approved, and then they you had to purchase your first initial film. So if you wanted to see a movie that was a Class A, you had to buy a Class A. Then you could exchange Class A's. You couldn't get an A for an H or H for an A or whatever. You had to purchase it that way and recycle it that way. And so you get a B, a C, a D, whatever. You had to buy one in each class if you wanted to do an exchange, or if you wanted to see that film in particular. Okay, so let's see if we can get this thing to work right here, and we'll run a film. What's that? No, well, yeah, this thing here, and then we'll have you put on the screen the Devil Dancers. Now this is a film I have not watched yet, so I'm hoping there's nothing damaged on it. But you're going to in for a real rare treat here, and that is these are called East Indian Devil Dancers. And I came across these colored 35 millimeter slides, which would have been projected on a large 35. And I'm sure they had nothing to do with the movies, but you're going to get to see, at least here you can see their colorful costumes. The movie is not going to be in color. So you're going to get this, I found a set of 4 of these, and I said, perfect to put them together. So for the first time, probably ever, you're a lucky audience. And here's one of the films. That's how they came in a can. 2 different sizes. This being the smaller half set. This is I forget. This is a Class A. This is as short as they come. So I don't know how much of this Indian devil dancing you can tolerate, but these were sent through the mail.
2 minutes.
Well, an H being the longest, was supposed to take the place of a 10-inch reel, which should run 12 to 15 minutes tops. But here you can kind of see on these films, the leader stock, it will say if the leader stock is still there, it'll actually say what's on there, which is good, provided they're, the only thing I've ever found wrong with these things, there'll be an occasional break, bad sprocket holes, which messes you up, or the leaders are gone, and you need the leaders. Okay, split reel. So you take this reel part here and stop. We're gonna have to kill the light if you would, please. Yeah. Probably the side one too. You can't. It's a video cam.
Yeah. That's the TV.
Yeah, that's gonna have to go off as well. Yeah, just the light. Can you turn just the light off?
Can we turn this light off over here so we can see the film? Thanks.
Hey, look at the lights. Okay. Good.
How about that?
Okay. A little tight here. Okay, we're a third of the way through. I know TV commercials longer than this.
We were just saying though how this history was saved because it was filmed. You know, that they never, see it.
So you can clearly see the still, colored stills that you saw previous were from this era when this was done. But not done by Edison. But it's a good contrast to let you see what a color film would do. One more. Now, would you like to see one more? It's about the same length.
How's your arm?
Oh, yes, it's been bulking up.
Yeah.
It's called Baby's Fall. If any of you know the Rolfs, Joan and Robin Rolfs, they in Wisconsin, they had told me about the film. They said it's a favorite film of theirs, and I found a copy of it probably within 5 years, and they're right. It's a good film, and Ellie will be playing at the opera, Baby's Opera. Now this one's going to be instead of giving you the treat of a colored picture before, this one here while we're playing it, we're going to play a nice digitized copy of an Edison British cylinder called Baby's Opera. Now, this is a first for me as well because I selected this music just on knowing what I saw. So this will be the first time I get to see and hear them together myself.
Where do you find these things?
Now eBay.
eBay.
Now eBay. But initially I used to find them, or I conversed with a lot of people over the years who were camera collectors. And you'll have that crossover, just like you have some people that are interested in phonographs, they might be interested in radios. So you have that crossover. This one here, maybe a doll collector would be interested in.
This Edison community is a very close-knit community, and they all support one another and help them. We know the Rolfs. I wanted some tin foil for our display. They shipped it to us. They asked me, do I have any replica light bulbs? You know, we all help each other, really. But they're more helpful to us than we are to them because we don't give anything away. But they're very kind to us. I have to tell you that the Edison community, the people who love Thomas Edison, love our museum and have supported us with many donations of artifacts. You know, so like the Rolfs actually, they live out in Wisconsin. They wrote a book about, they have a hydro-powered Edison electric home out there. That's what it was originally designed for.
And it was built before New York City was lit.
I think you got from my grandfather who has originally my grandfather's position.
Well, there's a show we go to every year where I actually met Kirk and a lot of the other people that we work with, and they come from all over the country, sometimes all over the world, and they collect and they share items. He goes to a lot more events than I do, I'm sure. There was a big auction recently. He was just telling me about an amazing phonograph he got, but this community is really so supportive. You know, we go to the light bulb show every year down in Baltimore, and I asked, I said, gee, I really don't have any old light bulbs to sell in our gift shop. And here came a crate from one of the collectors, said they're not important enough for him to keep, but if you want to share them, and that helps us in our gift shop and to create, you know, more sales for us, which supports us.
And hopefully interest for a new collector.
Absolutely. I had like a 12-year-old buy one the other day. I was so like thrilled that that's what he wanted. He didn't want a wand. He wanted that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. This one's a little bit longer. Yeah.
Oh.
Now I have to keep moving the film while I'm making the focus because otherwise I could fry this film. It's safety film, so it won't burn from one end to the other, but it'll scar the film image where it sits. Okay. All right, so does that seem to be focused good enough? There. There. Hopefully this will help. Okay, start playing music. And the lights, please. Baby's Harper.
Wow, look at this one.
I think it's a 4-minute cylinder. Oh, we got to put the date up? That's all right.
Yeah, the volume's not turned on. The volume's not working.
We didn't change anything.
No, we didn't, but the projector got turned off, so that might be it.
Oh,
So I'll have to block this. There we go.
okay.
So I'll just block it.
Well, there's no light happening. Hopefully the fan's still going. You good? Yeah. And this is, I'm not really sure if this was 1909, 1910 that this film was made. Maybe 1911 even. But I'll tell you, the storyline here is not really different, any different than what can happen today. Hold up. Okay, maybe we're going to see how the silence thing works. Did you see what she did?
Jumped up on that.
Yeah, no, but what did she do prior to okay. She's dropping toys out the window.
Oh.
Okay, here comes the doll.
I didn't know it was
Okay. So there it is, outside a story or two below with an awning. Now she has to retrieve her favorite toy.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, poor mother's in distress. Oh, we got a telephone in use.
Oh, yeah, this is.
Calling the husband at work, and the office boy has to answer. It's slowly or now. Spanking or no? The doctor made it there.
A happy ending.
Okay, so, questions? Or did we get them all?
How much did those people get paid for being in a movie like this?
That would be a good answer if I do.
There might be some records.
Yeah, there maybe, they do have records in most cases as to where the stuff was even done. You know, because they did travel the globe. You know, they had a movie studio in Havana, Cuba. They had a movie studio out in California, which later was sold and became known as Balboa. They sent a troop. They would send winter troops down into Florida. They did a lot of movie work down in Florida. They did even sent over to England, and they would portray whatever was being done on the
Most of the domestic production for the Edison Company was done at studios in New York.
Yeah, Bronx. Bronx after
Well, the
1908.
studio before the Bronx, and then the Bronx studio.
Yeah,
It was
1908.
built around 1908. They opened that one, the previous one. My second studio, something. I don't know. Address anymore. But most of them were done there. Before that, they obviously had the Black Maria for
Yeah.
the a while.
I do have some pictures over here.
Yeah,
for you to
Kirk
take.
has pictures, like some original pictures. Please come on over and look. But let's thank Kirk so much.
Thank you. Hopefully not looking forward to you.
I want to thank everyone, all our board members, all our docents that came to see this. It really is fascinating, and now we've learned a little bit more. It's like it takes a little bit, puts a little light on the subject, but there's a lot to learn. Of course, Edison did not do anything with these pictures here at Menlo Park, but it's still part of that overall history, and people ask us about it. And so we want to be able to answer.
Yeah, and as some people filed in earlier, I know Kathleen had pointed out, I brought 2 original movie posters.
That I have. One is over there, and the other one is over here behind Dr. Israel. And major note here is that they both happen to be movies that were actually released on Edison's birthday. That one in 1910, and that one there in 1918. And that one also has the distinction that that was the very last Edison movie production. It's called The Unbeliever. It's a World War I flick, and it has 2 big stars of the day in it, as well as one who became known more through years later historically. Erich von Stroheim plays a baddie in that one, and he was sent here to the East Coast. I was told because anti-German sentiment. They sent him out of Hollywood just to get him out of known whatever for the time being. And then he did different work for different studios out here. So I don't know how many, if that's the only thing he did at the Edison studio, but it was just happened to be the last film that the Edison company made. They did issue another 8 or 10 films made by James Montgomery Flagg. and they were released through the Edison umbrella. Edison Company had nothing to do with them other than with the distribution of them. And I did read a comment that Charles Edison had made, and it was kind of like they just kind of looked at them as they were just nothing films, but but they were some vanity for James Montgomery, because he acts in them himself, and they were all themed on different types of women. They were called The Girls You Know, or The Girl You Know. And there was a different series of them. And if you go on YouTube, you can see some of these things. Now, the Kino video through MoMA in New York, Museum of Modern Art, you can see that film as well, the Unbeliever. You can actually you get and watch that one, and it's entertaining. It reminds me a lot of what the movie Wings did in 1927, but here it was in 1918. So it's lots of weaving, crossover, anecdotal things. It's just amazing. Just like the colored slides of the dancing East Indian devil dancers. It's just amazing how this stuff shows up, and you can piece it back together somehow.
A question for you. I know for a while they were selling projecting kinetoscopes with stereopticon attachments. Do you have any of those?
Yeah. That's the very first ones did not have that feature, but they added it, and I think it was all part of the exhibitors.
Like I said, the whole thing. You give them a package, because if you would get to see, or like you saw with
the Barnyard one, we didn't get to see San Antonio, but the color. And it really, back then, going to movies was, I think, a little bit more different than what it is today. It was an evening out to take a date. Not saying that people still don't do that, but I think that was really something that people did. You came in from the farm, and you got to see a film, and the illustrated song slides or any of the other stuff, which are just absolutely gorgeous. Some of these photographers were just phenomenal. It's just like, wow, eye candy. It's just dripping Technicolor before Technicolor. Some of them are kind of fuzzy wuzzy, who cares? But a lot of the stuff of the song structure that was being written at the time, a lot of it's lovey-dovey stuff, and it's kind of painful to sit through, just to listen to, never mind watch and listen to, but it was just something that they could give them as a full evening's entertainment. The Stereopticon added that on it, because let's face it, before motion pictures, you could go watch pictures. They actually had magic lantern shows, and some of those could be really, really fascinating. I attended one. There was in Boston, I think, a guy from Connecticut. I can't remember anything about him, but I'll tell you, he had
3, which they made back in the day. They had 3 lanterns, and they could diffuse them from one image to another. And the color and the subject matter that they could do, it was phenomenal. They really were artists all by themselves.
So some of the color, a lot of early color film was actually just hand colored. Okay? So
It's on a film. It was cost. You actually had to pay an extra premium.
Yeah.
And you had when you initially had to buy those films in the earliest days, you could get them either just plain black and white or colored, but it was price per foot either way.
Right.
10 cents a foot or 12 cents a foot. If you wanted color, it was 15 cents a foot. Because they actually had to pay, usually women who were patient enough to sit there and colorize each frame on the film itself until they actually.
There were some experiments done at the Edison lab on attempts to colorize film. To develop color. A process for making color.
They would tint in the silent era. They would tint. They would tint certain sections of the film just to give you a mood. Like blue meant it was nighttime.
Right.
Whatever color was to make you feel warm. It was a love scene or something. They would do that, and then go back to black and white for a little bit, and then they do color, whatever this tinting. They called it tinting. I don't know how much more that added to the cost. It probably helped in some cases those films to exist because it washed more of that, the silver nitrate oxide, whatever, off of there. So the
there
film
was less possibility of recovering it and destroying the film.
Yeah. Because that's the other thing too is if you ever smell a film that's dying, it's bad. It really is a putrid sweetness smell. Almost I could liken it
to the cancer treatment. You know, that smell you get with that. What is that they give you? Chemo. You know, your body can emit that afterwards, and it's kind of a different smell. You know, something's not right there. But yeah, it's a whole host of things. It just goes all over, like collecting
postcards. You could follow the stars. You know, you can find them all with, you know, and it's funny because you'll find the same actor or actress working for this studio, that studio. You know, they moved around, you know. And eventually they went to California. And a fair amount of Edison's long-time devoted crew did go to California. And became famous unto themselves. Like one of note is the jazz singer. What is his name? No. He directed the film. His son became a director too. What is his name? Why can't I think of it now?
Anyway, it's easy enough to look up. But he was from the Edison studio. He went out there and he was part of the first talking film in California.
Any more questions? Otherwise, I do want to invite him to come up because he did bring all these amazing things down. It'd be great for you to check them out. Thanks again, everyone, for coming. Don't forget some cookies in the back.